Going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of Back Your Play with Q. As always, I'm your host, Rich Quinones, and we are brought to you by our good friends over at Fresh Roasted Coffee. 20% off that first order. Use the promo code in the show notes, the link BYP20 or Back Your Play. Also, Acorn to Oak for all your marketing needs. And of course, our good friends over at Play It Again Sports, 1450 Clements Bridge Road in Deptford, New Jersey. As we continue to go around the NFL, we welcome in our good friend Lloyd Vance, host of Lloyd Vance's Insider Football on Sports Radio 1029 FM. The Game, Southwest Florida's leading game in town and the newest game in town, also part of Broad Street South. And Lloyd does a great job hosting his show every Monday at 8 o'clock. Lloyd Vance's Insider Football. And as I mentioned, kind enough to join us as we continue our look around the NFC today. I guess you can say an interesting, not a compelling, but somewhat interesting NFC North. Lloyd, how are you?
I'm doing great, Q, man. And I'm excited to talk about this division. It's not just the Lions. The Lions had that big year last year,
Yeah.
and a lot of teams to talk about.
So the Lions last year, obviously, we look at what they were able to do, and they had a monster season. They got to the playoffs. Pardon me. They won 12 games. They were 12-5. Pardon me. They had an opportunity to beat San Francisco. And we always talk about the aggressiveness and the play calling of the head coaching. We saw last year with Dan Campbell. Someone can argue or debate the merits of the fourth down call. Right call, wrong person to throw the ball to in that situation. But yet they ascended. They took that next step. And right now to win the division plus 150, their win total is 10.5. So typically when teams arrive early, they kind of take a step back. We've seen that in the past. Now, if you look at this team, good offense, good defense, very good quarterback that's getting paid, really good wide receivers on the outside, solid tight end. I know the secondary had some issues. They gave up a lot of points, but they're content with if we give up 35, we'll be able to score 38. So right now the Lions are plus 150 to win a division. And do you see them going over that 10.5 win mark?
Yeah, it's right around the area I'm thinking, but I think they can get to 11. I don't expect them to be as great as the number one seed as they were, such a high seed and 12-5.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think they can get to 11 wins. This is a very good team. They pinpointed the area that you were talking about in terms of fixing this team because obviously defensively they allow 23 points per game, almost 400 points in the season, which is not very
Wow.
good. They brought in a lot of corners, Terrion Arnold from the University of Alabama, and then they brought in another corner in the draft. They also signed in free agency Carlton Davis coming from the Tampa Bay Bucks. So they're concentrating on the defensive side of the football. Aaron Glenn, the D coordinators guys, do a better job with those guys. But offensively, as you're alluding to earlier, they can compete with anybody offensively. With their tight end Sam Laporta emerged as one of the best young tight ends in the game, and then you have Amon-Ra St. Brown. Jared Goff gets the bag, and Q. I always kind of question him, but he deserved it. And this is a dangerous team offensively.
Three primetime affairs, I should say, for Green Bay on December 5th, Amazon Prime, but they open up against the Rams that people are sleeping on or believe will be a much better team or, a team that can take the next step, even though they won the Super Bowl a couple years ago. Tampa Bay, Arizona, Seattle. Then they get that early bye week 5, which is always tough. I'm trying to find some hiccups in their schedule. And it's kind of, for a team that won 12 games last year, you've got Chicago, people believe will be better than Green Bay, Buffalo, Chicago, 49ers, and Minnesota. That's probably their toughest stretch. Throw in Dallas, mixed bag with Tennessee. I mentioned Indianapolis. So they might have an opportunity to get off to a really good start, early buy in week 5. And then, as I mentioned, kind of that meat and potatoes right around late November into late December. And then the two big games are probably going to come down to Minnesota, could have playoff implications or seedings. And then you've got the San Francisco 49ers, which could also be for perhaps home field advantage. So I do like the Lions to win the division again at plus 150. I don't see them winning 12 games. I like them right around 10, maybe 11.
And as you said, when you look at that schedule, those last 5 games are going to be key because you have Green Bay in there, Buffalo, and I'm real interested in that Super Bowl. I mean, in the conference championship
Yeah.
rematch, week 17.
Green Bay won 9 games last year. They made it to the playoffs. It was interesting because a lot of people thought question marks, Jordan Love, wide receivers, these guys start to come into their own. They did. They weren't able to do that with Aaron Rodgers. They did it with Love. They put up a monster effort against the Dallas Cowboys, ran against them, threw against them, then obviously came back down to earth a little bit, even though this is still a team kind of like Detroit that had an opportunity in that game against the 49ers. I mean, that's all you can ask for a young team is to kind of hang around, and they lost by three, 24-21. This is coming off a 48-point explosion over the Cowboys, and they waxed them 48-32. Love with 272, and he was marvelous. Now you've got him minus 135 to hit that win total of over 9.5 plus 225 to win the division. Uh, I'm very cautious when I see a team arrive early to the party, i.e., Houston Texans, i.e., the Giants a couple years ago, and they took a step back. I think Green Bay, I think you can make adjustments. You know what you're getting from Jordan Love. You want to measure him now, year one, two, year three, or a full-time starter, year two. I'm not sold on Green Bay being a playoff team, and I'm not sold on them hitting that 9.5 mark.
They were a surprise team last year, as you said, and they took that step forward, but 9.5, basically 10 wins. I don't kind of, they're not going to sneak up on anybody this season. And yes, they're a good young roster. They're the youngest team in the playoffs last year. Their average age and their quarterback, Jordan Love, is coming along, and he seems to be that guy who's competing for the, top 15, top 10 type
Mhm.
quarterback. Um, we're going to have to see. A big thing is Josh Jacobs coming over at the running back position. How can he adapt to his new team? And I'm defensively solid across the board. This unit only allowed 20.6 points per game. But I'm going to talk about kickers here. Their kicker, they may have a problem there, Q. Andrews Carlson, he had a very inconsistent season. You talked about the misses that he had in the playoffs. And they brought in James Turner, a former Lion, to compete with him. So, you know, if it's a close game, the Packers, if they have Carlson as a kicker, you got to worry about that.
So I mentioned Love, and this will be his fourth season, but obviously his second full time as a starter. So now we start to see the maturation process, right? The reads, the progressions, hanging in the pocket, making that courageous throw and play. They're tested early because they've got the Philadelphia Eagles. They got them at home. Indianapolis, people believe, will be a better team. Then Tennessee, Minnesota. So a little mixed bag. I put up their schedule. Week 10 bye. Okay, not the most ideal, but maybe it sits where if you're a Packers fan, you want it. Coming out of the bye, Chicago, San Fran, Miami, Detroit, Seattle. So to me, we're going to see the rubber meet in the road with this team, latter stages of their schedule, second half, if you will. And if this is a team that's in at 7, 8, 9, they're going to have to win at least 4 or 5 to close it out to get to that 10, 11 mark. Because as I alluded to, I think 11 wins the division. The Lions right now, Green Bay plus 225. As I mentioned, to hit that under, it's plus 195 for the over plus 135, which I think is kind of high, and I'll double check. But odds makers are letting you know they think Green Bay is going to go over 9.5 wins. I'm not seeing it.
You have to worry about Jordan Love becoming this season's Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts had a great year 2022, 2023, kind of struggled. I want to see the Packers week one, as you said, against the Eagles, Brazil. Week seven,
Yep.
Houston, huge game. And then that last stretch is a gauntlet. So it's going to be fun to see if they can make it. But I agree with you that they're probably not going to hit that number.
So let me just pull it up. They were 2-3 as favorites. They were 6-5 as dogs. They were 4-2 in the North, 7-5 in the conference. They won a lot of close games. They picked up 6 wins in one possession games, which is pretty good. That's always the mark of a good team. So right now, as it stands, and I know there's been some money that's been laid on them. The Packers have 11 games this season against teams that finish above 500. So that, again, strength of schedule, it's going to be a little tough. We know that, but you're waiting to see where they're at. Okay, so let me clarify something. Uh, we know it's fluid with some of these lives. So the win total sits in 9.5, just over 9.5. The over payout is minus 134. The under is plus 110. I'm leaning towards the under at plus 110. I'll lay 100 to get the 10 juice. I'm fine with that. I think they hit the under. So I just wanted to kind of clarify that. Then you have the Minnesota Vikings changes. Really, the question mark starts and ends at the quarterback position. The odds makers don't think highly of Minnesota coming into 2024. Their win total is 6.5. If you want to play the over on that one minus 145 and the under at plus 100. I just don't like the makeup of the team. I think they've got a bridge quarterback we'll get into in a moment. This is a team that had issues even going back to their playoff loss to the Giants. The secondary got exposed, the run defense got exposed. I'll pull up the schedule while you give me your initial thoughts right now on the Minnesota Vikings. And again, let me stand corrected at plus 750 to win. I got my notes all discombobulated. Sorry, BYP crowd. 750 to win the division. So that's a nice little premium play right there if you're high on Minnesota, but plus 750 to win the division.
The Vikings are interesting, Q, because last year 7-10, they did lose Kirk Cousins with the Achilles, so you would say, all right, they didn't really have him. But this season, they're going to miss having Kirk Cousins as a veteran type leader. You're really not sure what Sam Darnold has at this stage in his career. I think this is his fourth team that he's on. But they did draft J.J. McCarthy, a kid. When you and I talked about the draft class, you just wonder, was he part of that championship team or was he the driver of that
Yeah.
championship team from Michigan? We'll see what he has. But in terms of the receiver position, obviously Justin Jefferson gets the bag. 4 years, $140 million, 110 guaranteed. He's the most explosive receiver in the game today. They also have Jordan Addison. And then one of the best young tackles, nobody's really talking about, Christian Darrisaw at the left tackle. He's really coming along. He was an all-pro player last season. TJ Hawkinson, tight end. And now they bring over Aaron Jones from the Green Bay Packers. So you wonder how much he has left. And defensively, this is another team that really struggled defensively. They allow more points than they scored. Uh, Brian Flores is their defense coordinator. He's got to do a little better job with this group. But I think they kind of were not going to hit that total that you put out there, and they may struggle. And it's maybe a growing season.
Midway through this edition of Back Your Play with Q, Rich Quinones here, Lloyd Vance, our NFL insider at Lloyd Vance, kind enough to join us, host of Lloyd Vance's Insider Football on Sports Radio 1029 FM. The Game, Southwest Florida's newest game in town, part of Broad Street South. You can catch BYP there as well as Middays with Q. I didn't get into their first 5 or 6 games. They open up against the Giants on the road. They are then at home against San Fran, at home against Houston, on the road against Green Bay, and then at home against the Jets. So, Darnold returns to the Jets. There you go. There's a storyline. I think that is a London game. I'm not sure. It's an early start, but
Yes.
that is a tough, tough first 4 or 5 games. I mean, let's just go on the premise they beat the Giants. Hard time beating San Francisco, Houston, Green Bay, the Jets. I mean, they might be staring down the barrel of a 1-4, 2-3 start going into the bye with Detroit looming. So, point being is, you're looking at that 6.5. You're looking to try to get to the 7. I'm not seeing it, man, especially to start that schedule and to close out the season. Chicago, Seattle, Green Bay, Detroit. So I might hammer the under when it comes to the win total for the Minnesota Vikings.
Looks like a tough schedule. They may put up a lot of fantasy football points playing from behind, but I think with a rookie quarterback, they're just going to have a tough season right now.
Yeah, and it's a question of when that kid's going to play, right? I mean, we know one thing with the final team, Chicago Bears, Caleb Williams will be a day one starter. He'll be under center when they take on Tennessee. Chicago plus 350 to win the division. And last year, this was a team, if you want to say smoke and mirrors with Justin Fields, 7-10. They play hard. We thought there were going to be some wholesale changes. Obviously, drafting of Williams. Here's the face of the franchise. Here you go. Chicago Bears have never really had that franchise quarterback throughout their history. Even if you want to sit there and say the Sid Luckmans of the world, but even, the McMahons of the world, cup of coffee, win a Super Bowl. Other than that, you can kind of go through the litany and the list of the revolving door at the quarterback position over the last 30, 40 years for the Chicago Bears. They're sitting at plus 350 to win the division. Their win total right now is 5.5. And that entices me because of a rookie quarterback that, quite frankly, I'm not as high and as giddy on as a lot of people are in Caleb Williams. I think the kid's going to struggle. They're giving them a ground game. They're giving them a tight end. Fix the offensive line. If you look at that offensive line last year, Justin Fields, just to throw it out there, was sacked 44 times. The offensive line did not do their job. One of the reasons that they shipped this kid out, give him a fresh start, if you will. But that being said, Williams, Chicago, 5.5. I'll pull up the schedule. Where are you at with the Bears?
Actually, I actually may like going over that number.
Oh,
Last year 7-10, the Chicago Bears. This is a team. I think they're primed to take a little step forward. They finally seem to have a quarterback in Caleb Williams. They put in their trust in him. Now we're going to see, is he worth it? As the number one overall pick. But they've surrounded him a lot in terms of offense. You already had DJ Moore there. Keenan Allen's coming over. Um, Komet's a good tight end, and then they have DeAndre Swift coming over at the running back position. But the offensive line, as you said, is a question mark. They do have Tevin Jenkins at left guard there for them, and a couple other young draft picks over the years that hot picks, and they're hoping to come together. But that offensive line is a question mark. Defensively, you have to like what Eric Washington, their defense coordinator's done with this group. They have playmakers along the defensive line and Montez Sweat in the linebacker position with Tremaine Edmonds, and then their secondaries come along as well. Now, I want to see if Kevin Byard has anything left. I was surprised they actually signed him
hmm.
after as bad as he played for the Eagles, but this could be a good young emerging team. Maybe they can shock a couple people and get to that win, 6-win total.
I'm not high on the quarterback. I'm just not. I saw too many red flags in college. I'm not saying the kid can play, but it translates differently on a Sunday. And I don't like the construction of the coaching staff. I don't like the roster. I mean, listen, if this kid goes down, you got Tyson Baggin and Brett Rippon, right? You got DJ
Yeah.
Moore, always inconsistent. Keenan Allen, veteran that's breaking down. DeAndre Swift wasn't utilized in Philly. I mean, are these moves that reek, hey, man, we're trying to build around Williams, or we're just trying to put a band-aid on some of these positions?
They put their eggs in their two first round picks. So you had Caleb Williams at number one, then you had at number nine, Roma Dunzier coming in from the University of Washington
Hmm.
at the number nine pick. So you hope these two young guys can gel together. But it's going to see. We're going to see if the popcorn pops. We'll see what happens with Caleb Williams. It's always tough to project these young bonus
Of
baby
course.
quarterbacks because, as you said, some of them they come in and the game is just overwhelming. Now, everything I've heard about him says he is studying, he is working with his guys, and that's always a good sign to hear because some of these young guys kind of lean on their talent and don't do the work off the field. But there's a lot to go on here. And let's not forget Matt Eberflus, their head coach, and the GM, Ryan Poles. They're on a hot seat as well
Yeah.
going into this season because last year they kind of got some leeway because there were a lot of guys left over from the old regime under Matt Nagy. But they have to win now, or the McCaskey family is going to make some changes.
They have a winnable game, Arizona, New England, but then there's a stretch: Green Bay, Minnesota, Detroit, San Francisco, Minnesota again, Detroit, Seattle, Green Bay. I mean, that's second half of their schedule, kind of brutal. And the other thing that I want to pinpoint is, they do get the benefit of this. Four out of their first six games are at home, which is always good for a rookie quarterback, right? He's got two back-to-back on the road, Houston and Indianapolis, but then back at home, the Rams, Carolina, that's a winnable game. Jacksonville, who knows what Jags team is going to show up. Then they get the bye week. I think we both can agree the Lions division to win, yes?
So it is the Lions division, right? And Dan Campbell's going to keep this team on the right track, and he's assembled a very good veteran coaching staff. There are a lot of former players on his staff, and I don't see them kind of getting complacent. So I think the Lions are going to keep the pedal on the metal, but it may be a little closer than we think in terms of winning that division. They may win it by a game, maybe two over Green Bay, but Green Bay I think can maybe slip into that seventh spot in the conference and go in as a wild card.
Detroit, Green Bay, Chicago, Minnesota.
Yeah, that's pretty much the way I'm looking at it.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I just think the Lions are class of that division. I just think they're a veteran team. They got the best quarterback in that division. Right now, they got the best head coach in that division. Minnesota's in flux. tough when you have a rookie quarterback in Chicago. And then Green Bay, I still think the fan base is waiting to see, can Jordan Love duplicate the success that we saw last season. And the kid certainly came into his own. So the Lions are plus 150, Green Bay plus 225, the Bears at plus 350, and the Vikings at plus 750 to win the NFC North. That is a look at the aforementioned NFC North. And again, from our good friends over at Play It Again Sports, another edition of Back Your Play BYP with Q. In the books, you can catch Lloyd during the week on Middays with Q as well as BYP, and also Monday night, 8 o'clock. We don't like to say 8-ish. We say 8 o'clock with Lloyd Vance's Insider Football on Sports Radio 1029 FM. The game, real quick before I let you get out of here, did you see that lawsuit now with the NFL, right? These numbers fluctuating that maybe the dish, the direct TV, the customer might get 3, 4,000. Other people are saying it's a couple hundred. I mean, listen, ultimately, we just kind of knew this day was going to come, right? The little man starting to push back, but it is a drop in the hat at the end of the day, whether it's billions of dollars to the NFL. They don't care. They'll pay it out.
Yeah, I think it's play money to them, unfortunately, and
Right.
they try to string it out as long as they could, of course, because they knew they were wrong the way to raise the prices and
That's
just
it.
put that out of reach for a lot of people. But Q, they're getting ready to sign a new TV deal coming up in the next couple of years. I think the CBA runs out in 2028, and they're going to think about all the more Amazon Prime money, and they're talking about getting some with Netflix and the NFL is going to get their money from all different sources. You know that. The revenues just keep jumping and the cap numbers get higher and higher.
Yeah, absolutely. We, as he mentioned, the numbers get higher and higher. We try to stay even keeled here on BYP with Q. So, with that, always appreciate Lloyd jumping on board. We'll do it again later in the week. Also, middays with Q. And as I mentioned, don't forget, download Sports Radio 1029 FM, the app, because you can get to hear Lloyd every Monday at 8 o'clock with Lloyd Vance's Insider Football, part of Broad Street South, part of BYP, and of course, part of Middays with Q. Always appreciate a couple moments, pal. Thank you.
Q, thanks for having me on.